The Challenges of Government conference brings policymakers from all around the world to Oxford to present the challenges they're facing in government and some of the solutions and the ways they're finding to implement better policies. And the Blavatnik School of Government hosts this conference every year so as to really take a fix, an annual fix, on what the world's not just problems look like, but what the solutions that are emerging in very different parts of the world look like.
The school can play a really important role for helping think about what makes better governance by good practices that are brought from other parts of the world, and also very importantly, what is the role of global governance.
We bring people together for plenary sessions where we have some specific global leaders presenting solutions, and then in roundtables so that the different private sector leaders, public sector leaders, students, researchers can get together in smaller groups and really compare notes on what's working in different parts of the world. We livecast the whole conference so that we can have people in different continents watching, contributing, commenting, or sharing it with their friends after the conference has actually finished. And then there's one part of the conference that we always open up to the public at large.
I absolutely love this conference. It's just exactly what an academic institution should be doing, providing like real level policy advice to the current problems that we see in the world. So I think it's fantastic.
Galvanizing growth is probably the biggest challenge for every government around the world. In Europe and the United States, it's about creating jobs, and that was one theme of the conference, how to create jobs. Other governments, such as across the continent of Africa, the challenge is how do you manage natural resources better? How do you manage oil, gas, mineral finds in your country? And that was a second theme. The third theme was how to regulate finance. How should Britain and the United States prevent another financial crisis, as they had in 2008? And how to make sure finance reaches the poorest countries of the world, again, to galvanize growth.
For me, it is an opportunity to hear and to learn experiences from other countries, other experts with different areas of expertise, students, on what is happening in terms of public policy. I think that the issue of public policies, the role of the state in our societies is changing radically, and more than ever, we need to freshen up our views.
So in the panel on jobs, there was a seemingly big clash. We had Diana Farrell from McKinsey's presenting their latest report, and that report tells us that education and skills policies matter. That's where governments should put their money if they want to solve some of the unemployment problem.
We need to begin to think of this as a system, not as different participants and what each participant can do on their own, but what they must do together to really deliver and to reduce this tragic situation of 75 million unemployed youth around the world.
But on the other side of the panel, we had Rama from the World Bank, who's just finished the World Development Report 2013 on jobs. And there the lessons are almost the opposite. They're saying don't put the money into education and skills until you've got the macroeconomics right, until you've really created the trade and investment and manufacturing capacities that are going to get people into jobs in the first place.
Job creation issues are not the same in an aging society, in an agrarian country, in a conflict-affected country. So our report comes out with a 8-size-fits-all typology of jobs challenges and policy responses.
It was terrific on the Natural Resources panel to have someone from the private sector there. We had Deborah Valentine from Rio Tinto. And of course, Rio Tinto have been involved in Mongolia for some time now. So Rio Tinto have been negotiating with the minister that we had sitting on the panel. And there was a nice to and fro between them, not without friction, it must be said.
Where we really both have twin aims is we do both want to maximize the wealth that comes from these resources. So, of course, I need to return some to the shareholders. You need to return some to your citizens, and we'll reach a fair agreement, a reasonable agreement as to how much that should be. I think you got a pretty good deal. I've got nothing back yet.
I think it's only in this kind of environment, in a room packed full of people who are all looking for solutions, that people have the space to have that kind of frank conversation, and because they know that they're looking for a solution together. A really powerful point about natural resources that was made by Dirk-Jan Omtzigt, who's been advising the government of South Sudan, is that it's not just about wealth and growth. It can be about peace. It can be about whether a country is going to be in a perpetual state of war or not. And he gave us a spellbinding account because it was first-hand.
South Sudan had to negotiate terms of secession to become an independent state, and so had to engage in very detailed and very difficult negotiations with the government of Sudan. And what I was able to do here at this conference was to explain a little bit the way in which South Sudan has successfully negotiated those terms, the strategy it pursued, and that has actually resulted in 9 peace agreements which were signed on the 27th of September. So it's a great story to tell, a success story in fact.
In the panel on development banks, we got into a great argument because, of course, many would say, what are development banks doing using taxpayers' money to fund investments, which actually the private sector should make? So we saw both the president of the African Development Bank, Don Kaberuka, and the number 2 from the Brazilian Development Bank, João Carlos Ferraz, challenge what's their exit strategy.
Do we really need publicly owned development banks anymore, or frankly, are they outdated anachronisms? I mean, they're put it bluntly, like that.
Because they're sitting on huge banks. The last 5 years have seen both of those banks succeed and grow and invest hugely.
It is not so much development banks, it is what kind of institutions do we need to get the development going. And the kind of institutions we need are state institutions, national, regional, international, which work with private markets to leverage additional capital, to ensure good policies, so that the countries over time graduate to depending on trade and investment instead of specific institutions.
The interesting finale of this panel was to hear from Peter Sands about the positive things that development banks really can do to help catalyse private investment. And suddenly you saw what it is that governments and big banks should be doing together.
I think that can be incredibly productive, and when it works well, you can really get some real power leveraging the strengths of the different kinds of institutions.
The panel on financial regulation was a real chance to take to task policymakers or policy advisors who have been right at the centre of the storm. You know, banks took us into the crisis. Are we going to regulate them properly or not? The moderator of the debate asked them bluntly, are we seeing the Great Escape?
I think banking went through a period where it began to lose touch with some of the core values that it needed to have, and really the social purposes that it needed to serve. And a school such as this, I think, provides a very interesting and important link to precisely those points. And I think that looking ahead, the banking industry is going through a major transformation, and I think for one which is going to be a very good and healthy one, both for the industry and for society at large.
What you really want from a conference like this is to arm every participant in the conference with a little checklist. Is my government doing what it should be doing or not? Is my government imposing the right capital requirements on banks? Are they really serious about that or not? The answer at the moment is typically not. Are they really going to do the structural reforms that John Vickers laid out, or are they not? Are they really going to do something about the big global banks, or are they not? And I think arming citizens with that kind of checklist is exactly what the Blavatnik School of Government should be doing. In the final session of the conference, we focused on deepening democracy.
I'm participating in this conference in my capacity as a former member of a commission that was led by Kofi Annan on elections. It's called Deepening Democracy, and it deals with the concept of elections with integrity. So this is all obviously very significant for governance.
Elections where there's no hope of change are very peaceful in the short term. They're very dangerous in the long term.
What I loved about the Deepening Democracy panel was hearing 5 of our Master of Public Policy students respond to that. So we heard from different regions, from Nigeria, from Yemen, from Germany, from China, from India, what it is that a student from each of those countries thinks is the most important thing to strengthen in democracy in their own country.
Let me share with you some comparative statistics. A Nigerian senator earns 8 times more than the US senator and 3 times than the American president himself. Nigerian political leaders, they are one of the highest paid in the world. A senator in Sweden will work for 12 years to earn what a Nigerian legislator will earn in 1 year. So you can imagine the huge disparity. The angry man on the street is hungry and angry, with 60% of the country earning less than $1 a day.
If I may be casual, it's all about the money. It's not about democracy. The West, US, UK, everyone has paid lip service to democracy in the Arab world. On the ground, it's about the money. It's whoever has the money can get what they want through. That's the reality that we're fighting every day. I'll tell you what the US, for example,
It's so important in this conference to bring in both future leaders and current leaders, to bring in private sector, public sector and non-governmental organizations, and to bring researchers and practitioners. Because once you get all those communities together, you can look for solutions that aren't just great ideas, but that are actually implementable, sustainable policies.
I'm impressed by the kind of the range and the magnitude, the quality of people that they've brought into this session. So I think that speaks well of it.
I think an institution like Blavatnik can play a major role in bringing together people to be involved in those debates.
This conference, in the end, is an important compass-setting exercise for the school, taking us right up close to problems, hearing about solutions, and also being challenged to do research that's really going to help governments solve these problems. That's why in the end we want this to be an annual event. We want every year to be reminded about what we should be doing and how it can usefully help to strengthen government around the world.